for the third. We will be recording this webinar. Again, thanks for joining us. This is the third of a three-part online workshop series in environmental literacy. Today's focus is fostering environmental literate society. And today we're going to be led by Lindsay Manzo from Ohio Sea Grant and Linda Chilton from University of Southern California Sea Grant. And next slide. So just to remind you what we've done up till now in the series, our first one was back in December, and that was Environmental Literacy 101, where we talked about what is literacy, what is environmental literacy, how can we help ourselves as SGen members in advancing our environmental literacy efforts, and how can we help our colleagues that maybe don't identify as educators, but are Sea Grant colleagues in doing the environmental literacy that they do. The second session was in January, after everybody returned from break, and it focused on ocean literacy from grassroots to global. So how the ocean literacy effort started and what we can learn from that as Sea Grant, not just educators, as Sea Grant personnel, and how we can apply those same concepts to that. And so today we're going to look at fostering the environment, and here are our goals. So we are going to refresh our memory about what we did with aligning the ocean literacy principles with the Sea Grant focus areas and DEI, which is a common thread through everything. We want to help our SGen members in conveying the importance of environmental literacy to our colleagues. And we're going to focus on the ocean literacy and Great Lakes literacy and climate literacy principles, where we're going to identify concrete examples for each of them. And we're going to look at that at a regional level, and also some tools, knowledge, and skills for the next step. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Lindsay, unless there's any questions. And thanks for joining us.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Yes, welcome to everybody. Thank you for choosing us over the national office. Means a lot. What I want to do first is I want to jump to the Jamboard. Megan was saying that there's quite a few pictures populating in there. So what I'm actually going to do is come out of full screen and just jump to the Jamboard this way, because I haven't looked at it yet. And let's see. So if you're not familiar with TikTok, and in all honesty, I don't tick or talk, but I do know a little bit about it. And there was a Tell Me challenge, and a good example would be tell me you're from Ohio without telling me you're from Ohio. So we switched it up and said, tell me how your program is fostering environmental literacy without telling me how your program is fostering environmental literacy. So each of the regions, I'm curious to see what we have. We have people telling us here. Let's see. Ooh, art in the environment program. That's cool. Educators engaging students in outdoor investigations. So that's coming from the Mid-Atlantic. I don't know that we have anybody on from the South Atlantic. Ooh, Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana's in here. And oh, I love those. March 1st is Mardi Gras. Oh, that's true. Happy Mardi Gras, everyone. You're right. And we've got USC. Oh, I don't want that little guy to come up. Pull you up here just so we can see. Oh, now I messed up Linda's good thing. I won't move it. Ooh, I like that. I'm actually doing the Data Stream Ocean course right now with Terry Kirby Terry, I'm getting Terry's mixed up. Terry Kirby Hathaway, not Halsey. And we were just talking through tides and topography actually last night. And Megan said Great Lakes went a little crazy. So there are lots and lots of pictures on there. So it's just a cool thing to do. I actually do it with my teachers for different topics. And after they came back from winter break, I did the same thing. Tell me how your winter break was without telling me how your winter break was. And we got some fun pictures to laugh about and all of that. So thank you for playing along. I'm going to go back to where we were. And okay, so what we're going to look at today, there are a couple driving questions. And we had ideas as a group of what we thought this third session might look like. And they have definitely evolved throughout this whole process because of all the work that you folks have done. And I'll explain a little more about that in a second. What we really want to be able to do now is to look at environmental literacy beyond us just talking about it, and what does it look like in action, and not just for us, but for our other colleagues in our offices as well. So what does environmental literacy look like when it's put into practice? How can authentic place-based connections to environmental literacy be an integral part of all of our Sea Grant work? And one of the key ones here, really, I think is the crux of it all, is how can we help our colleagues understand how they're contributing to environmental literacy efforts? How can we help them see that? And that was really one of the things that came out of the environmental literacy visioning process, was to be able to provide this information for all of you so that you have it at your fingertips when helping others understand sort of the integrated pieces of environmental literacy. So what we're going to do, I'm going to share a little bit about what came out of the second session. And then we're going to we're going to do one breakout room by region, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll do a second breakout room where we'll all be mixed up. And then we're going to come back and do some whole group discussion. So just so you can sort of see the overall flow. And I wanted to start off with, how do I get rid of this guy? I want him to, I don't want to leave. I want him.
What are you trying to do, Lindsay?
Are you seeing my UR screen sharing thing?
We are not.
Oh, you aren't. Okay, good. I thought, because it's like covering words and I don't want it to keep covering words. That's fine. Okay, thank you. I'm more of a Google person than Zoom, so I just don't know what you can see always on the other ends. I wanted to bring us back though to where we started. In NOAA's education strategic plan, and one of our goals sort of moving forward as Sea Grant educators is we are trying to align some of our metrics a little bit better with NOAA, just to help us all in the long term with streamlining reporting and things like that. So I'm not reading this all the way through, most of everybody should be pretty much be familiar with this, but pulling out those keywords, knowledge and understanding, behavioral strategies, and making sound and effective decisions. Those are all actionable items or things that we are actually working on. And one of the things that you might notice, if you pull those words out, and this graphic over here on the right under environmental education, this graphic is just it's a version of what you would find in the literature that's been described since, I would say, the 1970s, maybe even a little bit before, where we have that awareness at the base, and then we have knowledge, and then attitudes and skills and action. And if you look at those definitions in the words that we were just talking about, you can see that environmental literacy, and rightfully so, should parallel with that bigger concept of environmental education. And it's sort of all working together. And one of the things, some folks hear education and they think K-12, and it makes sense. Most of our educational experiences are in a K-12 setting, but we want them to be able to see, where does their work fit in all of this? Your communicators may be building awareness, but not necessarily skills or helping behavior change, but you would have other folks that might be doing that. As educators, sometimes we're playing in all of these segments, not just a particular one. We literally have somebody right now who was out today doing a stewardship project and a cleanup with their students, and then they're going back out tomorrow. So, and other times we're just helping get people information. So thinking that through, we know, and Diana talked about this and Lynn talked about this last time, there are lots of literacies out there. Ocean got a good thing going and everybody else decided to follow. So there are all kinds of them out there, but for today, we're only going to look at 3 and in a broad sense. We're first going to look at ocean and Great Lakes, which is why we're going to divide by region so that Great Lakes folks can focus specifically on their literacy principles, and everyone else will be in separate rooms, but we'll be looking at ocean. And then the second time when we break out, we will be going to talk about climate. And if we look at session 2, if you remember from session 2, we had Jamboards and we were given a literacy principle, and we were looking at where did the fundamental concepts fall under the different focus areas. And after that, I laid all the Jamboards out and I'm looking to see what everybody has. And we're trying to say, okay, how do we put this into something that's usable? How do we put this into an organized format? So we went from something initially that started like this to this, which we started thinking, okay, how can we make this a little bit more usable? And it turned into a dynamic spreadsheet. This was totally unexpected. I don't think any of us thought that this is how all of the work that you folks had done, how it would turn out, or the product that would come out of it. But it's really clearly demonstrating where the concepts align with our colleagues, with the work that our colleagues are doing, and in the focus areas. So then we got to thinking, what about the Great Lakes? Maybe that was a little bit more me, but I'm not going to let us be left behind. So we said, all right, so some Great Lakes folks, actually Brandon Schroeder jumped in, and Angie, and went through and looked at the Great Lakes and figured out, okay, where does all this fit? And it was really some good conversation. And then we got to thinking, and Linda made a very good point that climate is something that's on the forefront of a lot of the work that all of us in Sea Grant do. So we said, all right, let's look at climate. So we ultimately ended up with multiple tabs in a spreadsheet, but with all the same format. And then we started thinking, okay, so we have this spreadsheet. What can go in the boxes? How can Sea Grant educators use this as a tool, not just a spreadsheet to read? See some of the connections, directors, communications folks, extension folks, researchers, even program officers. And that leads us to where we are today. And before I go there, Linda, is there anything that I have left out from session 2?
I think you covered it really well. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have questions at this point too? I can't see a chat, so feel free to just unmute and ask also. All right, I'm going to move forward then. So here's where we are today. And our work today is thinking about some concrete examples of what could go in each box. Those examples representing the awesome projects that are going on, everything from aquaculture to zebra mussels, A to Z. Where are our projects? Where are our products? Where do they fit? How is Healthy Coastal Ecosystems supporting a certain concept in ocean literacy? So for example, and I blew these up because it's really hard to, I think, to read the smaller pieces. Texas has an iSeaTurtle app, which is a product that they have. And if you look at it and I really just went to some of our programs websites to pull some of these examples under healthy coastal ecosystems, and then looking at the ocean literacy principle. Number 5, most of the major groups that exist on Earth are found exclusively in the ocean, and the diversity of major groups of organisms is much greater in the ocean than on land. And that's one of the places that fit. So that person, whoever, or that group or that team that was developing this is where their work fits in the scope of the focus areas and in the scope of ocean literacy efforts or environmental literacy efforts. Another example, the aquaculture. Aquaculture in shared waters was a program in Maine. Same thing. Where did it fit? Okay, I picked this line just because there are a couple examples for the same, fundamental concept, but you can see another one there. And the capitalized one, it's strictly capitalized just so that I was keeping things straight. If I capitalized it, it meant it was a research. It came from a researcher. So if you looked up current research in Alaska, for Alaska Sea Grant, this is one of the things that was just very recently done, integrating local and ecological knowledge and survey data to improve assessment and management of rockfishes in Alaska. And where might that fit? Eventually, we could really go back to any of these, and being a dynamic document, put in the link. Just link, we could easily add a link right here to the purple box, and it would take you, right to where they featured the research that was going on. So that's where we are going to start today. We are going to break into rooms, and let me check my time. Okay, we're a little bit behind, but we'll be fine. So we're going to go ahead and break into rooms, and I'll let Jackie take care of that here. I'll stop sharing my screen. But once you're in your room, your goal is to add some concrete examples to ocean or Great Lakes, depending on which one you're in. And it's very helpful to add your state afterwards or your program name afterwards. You can see the list of the rooms. If you're in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic networks in room 1, South Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean in 2, West Coast and Pacific Alaska in 3, and Great Lakes in 4. And we'll probably go until about 4:10. We might be okay. Well, let's aim for, we'll go between 4:05 and 4:10. All right, welcome back. Sorry, I flipped my paper here. I'd like just to take a few minutes and for someone from each room just to share out. And a couple of us that had come back first are actually thinking that we really want to give you some more time with this because it takes longer to process than what we think. But so what about the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic? Does somebody want to just share what some of your discussions were?
Sure.
Are you seeing patterns or trends?
Yep.
Or what was hard?
Yep. So some of the patterns and trends that were noted were, there's a lot of workforce development things that were put in, things that were reflective of different public stakeholder groups. In other words, there was a lot of different things that may or may not be considered education that were being put in there, which was kind of cool. One of the challenges was the scrolling, and that's why I had put in the ocean literacy guide so that if you wanted to take a look at just the guide instead of scrolling up and down. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but we managed to make that through successfully. One comment that came up right at the end that is pretty important, one that we should discuss later. Grace asked, what's the difference between environmental literacy and environmental education? And Adam started to answer that, but at some point we should come back to that.
That is very good. I can totally see Adam talking about that. What about Southeast and Gulf Coast was Lisa. Lisa.
We had some very engaging discussions, me, myself, and I. No, we don't have any representation from those areas, or at least not in that room. So I took the opportunity to start by just went to the Georgia Sea Grant website and just started perusing their programs and plugging it into the spreadsheet, which one I discovered there's so much great stuff going on that is new to me. And so I'm really looking forward to, hopefully at NMEA, we can get that time to share all the great programs that are going on. And I would love to continue that exercise with those other states, because there's really some great stuff going on. And it was fun to find where the right box where it fit, because something, there was always a place for an activity that they were doing that would fit in with. If we were to do this type of thing with our non-educator identifying Sea Grant colleagues, I think they could totally then see, I think this process would help them make that connection, that this project that they're doing, it might not be an education labeled project, fits right into the ocean literacy principles. So I think this would be a great activity for our colleagues to do.
Awesome. And Diana, I just saw your question pop up. You can add multiple things in the box. I mean, I don't know what that will look like later, but for now, I mean, I found that, and when I was just looking for some examples, there was a couple of times I put two in the same, or put two different ones in the same box. I just listed them both there.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And we just decided to separate with dashes or commas or something, but it'll just mean cleanup later. But yeah, so I'm sure that'll come up again.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I hope we can see with this is that it's dynamic and it's evolving to keep making it better for what we need it to be. What about our folks out on the West Coast?
We got started and looked at what was and folks were joining as we went along. So it helped be able to add information about what we were doing. I think that once we started going through it, we got a real good sense of how do we use this? And yes, that there's so many possibilities. And so yes, taking time and being able to populate it with what's happening. I think changing font or something to help indicate it's a different program in the boxes as we add is really exciting, and recognizing that even though a box may not have been highlighted in color doesn't mean that it shouldn't be. And so that there's some real flexibility there as well.
Thank you. And what about the Great Lakes, the North Coast?
So we have been working on adding in different programs and tools and materials that we've developed or are aware of. We did spend a lot of time talking about like, how do you put things into different buckets when it's not necessarily an evergreen program where like the themes and items might change over time. So that was something we deliberated a lot about, and just trying to figure out how to put everything that we've done, both like from Siegel and then our other state programs, into the spreadsheet, but we see a lot of uses for it. So thank you all for putting together.
It's a really good point, is programs overlap between Sea Grant and other programs, and do those fit or don't they, or where do you make that distinction? I know for us, we talked about if there's Sea Grant involvement, then it can be included.
And we came to the same conclusion. We put things in, whether it's something that's standalone or you're working with partners, and also if it's something that, is in your upcoming omnibus that you plan to do, then put it in and just say, just label it as such.
I think that there's definitely a lot of options for how this could be used. By program, by region, nationally. I think there's a lot of different scales, and that's what I'm hearing from all of you right now. We're only about 2 minutes behind. That's pretty good, for me at least. So we are, oh yes, the omnibus, yes. We are going to take a break. Let's do, let's see, let's just go until, what is it, 4:22? Just go until 4:25, actually. We're okay to go a little bit longer because we may change up a little bit for the second part. So, I'm going to actually share my screen again. before you head out on a break. Let me put this back up. And go back to my one here. What I wanted to put up in case you are just sitting there enjoying it, your break, a book came out today called Washed Ashore, Making Art from Ocean Plastic. It literally debuted this morning by Kelly Krull, and you can find it on Amazon. But the whole point is it's all of these art projects that have been done with marine debris. And it's also a secret in the art. And then there's always a section that describes the organism. And then there's always a call to action in the top right corner. So it's just a cool book that I did some of the reviews with it and just to share it. So with that, we will see you at 4:25. Welcome back. And what we are going to do, a couple of us just talked a second here, and we are going to break back into some rooms. And rather than focus 100% on climate, Linda had a very good idea of saying, let's open a room for ocean, a room for Great Lakes, and a room for climate literacy, and allow you to join the one that you want. Because some of those rooms, I know we're having some really good conversations, but I know that there are some folks that are really interested in looking at the climate ones and where pieces go. So let's go ahead and jump into those, and we'll go until about 4:40. That'll give people a little bit more time. Do we have everybody back?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Let me just check. Yep, we got them all now.
Apologies, because it probably broke up somebody's really good conversation. It's inevitable in, virtual worlds. But I was able to jump in on a couple of different rooms, and I loved what I was hearing. I would like people to sort of share out a little bit. I actually wouldn't mind, Adam, if you could share what you were just sharing in the ocean room. I think that that's a really good idea, and I think people can relate to that and would understand. Do you mind sharing what you just shared about how it would be like the NGSS ocean literacy piece?
Sure. I was just mentioning that I think if we're doing this as a work group at the NMEA meeting or at another venue, it doesn't always have to be at NMEA where we can gather. Putting that spreadsheet up on a screen and then working together with each other to kind of define the parameters of where things fit, although some are more obvious than others, some may not be. I think that's what people are struggling with, like where exactly do they fit? I think having a dedicated session to that, and we could certainly do it at, this summer's meeting, not that we want to just kind of take over the plans of whoever is planning what we're doing. But that would be a really valuable experience for everybody. I mean, it would help everybody kind of understand how we want to align that. It would help us do the same thing with our other parts of our programs that have these various focus areas. So I know how much I got out of the session that we did with the NGSS and the ocean literacy principles, and I could kind of see the same being done with this.
Thank you. Thoughts from being in these rooms or the other one, patterns you were seeing or ahas or challenges. I know that the amount of text that we have because of the text of the principles and scrolling can get awkward.
Well, we had two folks, I'm going to kind of call on people, sorry. We had Celia was talking about how the aquaculture community of practice folks are aligning their activities with ocean literacy, because we had a discussion about should some of these other groups make their own literacies like ocean and Great Lakes and climate. And then we talked about how long it took to actually put that together. So maybe sticking with the frameworks that we have. So maybe Celia can talk about that one. And then David talked a little bit about how having this as a visual now makes it easier, not only for our own understanding, but to share it with our colleagues.
Sure. All I had mentioned was because because we're able to align a lot of the aquaculture resources to the ocean literacy principles, the K-12 resources, I think it would be pretty easy to align the non-K-12 resources in aquaculture specifically, but probably in other programs as well. They really do, because it's truly something that not just every school kid should know, every citizen of Earth should know. It's, there is a way to align them. So yeah, I do not think that we need to, reinvent the wheel for each individual program, but, perhaps maybe taking a subset that we know is directly related and just showing them that subset. Maybe that's an easier way to get them on board, but I certainly don't think we need to rewrite anything.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think Diana covered what I had to say. I just think it's a really interesting way to show other people and kind of get an overview of how everything fits together and also where we could go. So if maybe if something fits that topic area that maybe isn't exactly matching it, we can help them match it, help people to connect better.
Well, and I think also if we can find ways to be able to show where there are overlaps, that it may be working on healthy coastal ecosystems and resilient communities. So figuring out how within a structure we can be able to demonstrate both things with a project or a program.
Is that something, and I just don't know the answer. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong thing. I just don't know the answer to this. With reporting, is that where, like, can a project be reported or something be reported in under 2 focus areas?
It has to have a primary focus area,
Okay,
and then it can have a secondary, but you have to be really careful. Otherwise, it shows up like almost all the work you're doing in your program is one area, and it may not be accurate. So you have to make sure you're prioritizing.
okay. I don't do a lot of that piece, so I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's new and it's challenging.
Anybody else?
Angie has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. So I was wondering, we were wondering this in our Great Lakes meeting, our breakout room. How does time impact this collection of work, this spreadsheet? Is this something that we have to come back and revisit on a yearly basis and update projects? Are we removing projects when they become outdated or when something is done? Do we not remove things and this becomes sort of turns into a historical document as well? And also, apart from a great understanding of what's going on across the whole network, and being able to communicate with other people in our program of how they're promoting environmental literacy, how else are we using this?
I can speak to that a little bit on these. And talking with Joshua, he's very excited about sharing results from this work with the Sea Grant Advisory Board and with this level. So that's how it also could be shared and contributed within our own individual programs. But I think we can get more of a scope of what's happening across Sea Grant Education network wide, potentially looking at where are there gaps and where can we also perhaps go together in working toward finding initiatives that need funding and support on an ongoing basis, because I know that's a struggle that we all end up facing, is how do we fund really good work that we're continuing. So there's a lot of possibilities there. I would suggest that, this is something that could be revisited prior to each annual meeting. One of the advantages of Jamboard is you can save a PDF of a form or of a file, and you've got that for an annual basis, or we can save it after this meeting and then it can still be added to and updated. It still takes some finessing to put all of the separate ones together, but lots of possibilities are my initial thoughts.
I also think we don't know what we don't know. Sort of about, and how this came to be in the first place. We didn't really expect that. And I think it's an evolving process and document. What is the best way? Scrolling is, probably not the most conducive to really getting people to work with it. And, what is that better way to put it all together or things like that. So I think some of what you're saying in terms of how can we use it, I think we're going to see some of those opportunities arise. We just may not know what they are yet, but that's a great segue. I'm actually going to skip number 3 for a second. We'll come back, but I was wondering, Linda, since you were sort of already on that step of, where this might go with the national office, would you mind chatting just sort of through what this is going to look like between now and July?
Sure. So, today's work, the committee that's been working on this series together is going to be looking at it and synthesizing it and being able to share it, reaching out to perhaps to programs that weren't able to attend to make sure we're capturing as much as we can. And then we're also going to look at what tools are missing, because we really need to hear from all of you. What are the things that each and every one of us needs in going back to work within our own programs and to talk with our staffs to help better articulate how we all can and need to work on environmental literacy consciously within the work that we do. The Mid-Atlantic educators, our Mid-Atlantic meeting that's coming up, that core team of educators have agreed to go and present at that meeting in March. And is it March or April? I'm not sure. It's one of those. And to share what we're doing and then to give feedback to the planning group and to see, well, how else do we need to modify this? One of the hopes is that all of us will go back to our programs and begin work on exploring this within our own offices, so that when we come to the annual meeting in July, we'll have things that we can share out. We'll have ways that we've implemented it, ways that things haven't worked, things have worked, and again, be able to modify it and reflect on it. And we're going to ask everyone to please share, those results on a slide for the meeting. So at our annual meeting, we always share a slide of what's gone on in your year. And this year, we're asking that slide focus on environmental literacy and building capacity within your own program, whether it's also understanding ourselves and knowledge of what the rest of the different portions of our program are doing, or if it's building that knowledge overall of, gosh, I didn't know as a communicator, I'm doing this environmental literacy in this way, or in research, these are the ways that we're addressing environmental literacy through our broader impacts. To raise that awareness and to be able to share back with one another so we can learn from one another's strategies. Lindsay, I think we can't hear you.
I don't like that this covers that up and then I can't get to it. Sorry. So going back a step, thank you, Linda. I think just given our time and to maybe give people a couple minutes back just to regroup before hitting the end of the day. We had talked about doing this sort of separate, but I think maybe we will turn this into our post webinar something to keep going with. So one of the things in looking at the tools is after you've played with this a little bit, thinking how might you use this? And I think we've had some of that discussion as it is. And if there are other tangible tools or things that you see are needed to effectively carry out that work, And there is also a Make-A-Wish. What would your wish be to be able to do this? So if you are looking at the Jamboard, there's one on there now. How might you use this with helping other educators, and what other tangible tools? And then what would your wish be for thinking about environmental literacy? Make a wish. I wish that what? Just sort of thinking big and broad. And I think perhaps if it works for folks, we will just put that in the follow-up email and add that to the website for folks to complete afterwards. How does that sound? I cannot see a single person.
Sounds good.
That's
Okay.
great.
And if anyone, does anyone have a thought right off of something that does stand out to you in terms of tools?
I just learned a great tool in the chat that if I hold down my space bar, it temporarily unmutes me. What?
It's true. Isn't that cool?
My mind is blowing. I encourage you all to try it.
What happens, what we're listing right here, Leah, are programs that often are included in our reporting. In fact, probably are included in our reporting, but this form is not an additional form for reporting. It's to build our own capacity and knowledge of what's happening across the network. And very well will be used in sharing, but it doesn't go through EC Grant.
Thank you. And I think with that, I think we're gonna come to a close today. Anybody have any other last questions? It was great to see people. Thank you for choosing us over the national office. Although I am anxious to see the recording from that one and just listen in.
And
Sorry, I just
Yep.
want to thank you all for having me. And I know I can't contribute too much because I'm not in a specific program, but it was really nice to just hear everyone talk this out and figure out how to use the spreadsheet and everything. So I appreciate the, invite.
And Anna, just in case there's anyone who hasn't met you, Anna Sosa is our Knaus Fellow with Sea Grant Education in the national office, but also with NOAA Education, building that bridge for all of us. And it's just so nice that you've joined us today. And we know that you're going to have a good sense of all of us very soon. And it'll be really exciting to have you share what you see and what you hear. So thank you for speaking up at the end. And thanks everyone for coming today, and look forward to working with you and talking with you more.
Have a good afternoon.